It had been almost a year since Congress passed the Voting Rights Act, but white resistance remained strong. In Mississippi alone, more than 300,000 blacks were not registered to vote. James Meredith, the first black person to enroll at the University of Mississippi, was determined to change all that. On June 5, 1966, Meredith left Memphis, Tennessee, prepared to walk 220 miles to Jackson, Mississippi. He called it a march against fear.
To point up and challenge, if necessary, this all-pervasive and overriding fear that's so much a part of the day-to-day life of the Negro in this country, and especially Mississippi.
On the second day of his march, James Meredith was shot from ambush.
We, as you know, have been greatly concerned about the shooting of James Meredith. We have expressed that.
Leaders of major civil rights organizations rushed to Memphis, Tennessee, where James Meredith was hospitalized. They vowed to continue the march for him.
And something needs to be done to make it clear that we are not going to be stopped, we're not going to be intimidated.
From the start, there was conflict.
If we're going to be free, we will have to suffer for that freedom. We will have to sacrifice for it.
That I'm not going to beg the white man for anything that I deserve. I'm going to take it. We need power. We need power. That's what we need. We need power just like everybody else.
And I think it was more of a youth movement in all of the organizations asserting themselves far more than it was competition among leaders themselves. It was a clash of ideas, no question about a clash of ideas.
The leaders began marching at the point where Meredith had been shot. Mississippi state troopers forcefully prevented them from marching on the road's surface. Carmichael, angered by this rough handling, stepped forward to retaliate, but Dr. King restrained him.
We've got to realize the white folk in the state of Mississippi ain't nothing but a bunch of racists, and the only people who can stop them are the black folk in Mississippi. Now we've got to make this march our march. This has got to be the march for the black people in Mississippi. And the only way we can make that our march is that we got to go to every little place and get every black man and black woman, black boy and black girl out who's not afraid. And let's march. And let's make this our Mississippi. It's got to be our Mississippi.
In sweltering heat, the marchers walked along Highway 51, stopping in towns along the way to register new voters.
How long have you waited to register? How many years?
Oh, long time. No.
How many years?
Oh,
How old are you?
I'm 106 years old, 9 months. I never fooled with the things that were getting up, and I don't mess with them now.
How do you feel, sir?
Me, I feel good.
All right.
Freedom got a shotgun. Freedom got a shotgun. You know freedom gonna shoot it. On those segregated bigots. I said freedom got a shotgun. So let's
Need somebody to help me say it one time.
20 Mississippi state troopers provided some protection, but halfway through the march, that number was reduced to 4. Governor Paul Johnson announced he wasn't, quote, going to wet nurse a bunch of showmen. As James Meredith recovered from his wounds, the threat of another attack against the marchers was an ever-present concern.
There was a new sense of anxiety that we were becoming involved in something that might have consequences, something real. It wasn't an academic exercise.
Unit 1, 10-4.
As the marchers camped each night, They were protected by an organization known as the Deacons for Defense and Justice.
Are any of them armed?
Well, I would think so.
What do they carry?
Well, it depends. 38s, 45s, M2s.
Are they prepared or trained to use them?
Yes, they are.
I'm tired of violence. I've seen too much of it. I've seen hate on the faces of too many sheriffs in the South. And I'm not going to let my oppressor dictate to me what method I must use.
SNCC planned to issue a dramatic call as the march approached Greenwood, Mississippi.
Willie Ricks was sent out as head as the advanced scouts, and sometimes he could have as many as 20 to 40, and as we grew bigger, even 20 or 40 people under his direction to spread out. And his task was to take them, spread them out to plantations, speak to the sharecroppers, tell them the march was coming through, but to throw out black power and to give little black power speeches to get the reaction. I think about 3 nights before Greenwood, because SNCC was decided where's the best place for us to launch it. About 3 nights before Greenwood, I remember about 2 o'clock in the morning, Ricks came back and he was giving a report, and Cleve Sellers was sitting next to me, I remember. And Ricks was saying, we ought to drop it now. The people are ready for it. He said, I said it the other day, and they dropped their hose, you know. And I said to Cleve, I said, you know, you've sent the wrong man out because we need a clear analysis here, and this man is given to exaggerations.
What do you want? What do you want? What do you want? What do you want?
Ricks had everybody primed. He said, just get to your speech. We're going against freedom now. We're going for black power. Don't hit too much on freedom now, but hit the need for power. So we built up on the need for power. And just when I got there, before I got it, Ricks was there saying, hit him now, hit him now. I kept saying, give me time, give me time. When we finally got it and we dropped it, black power, of course, they had been primed and they responded immediately. But I myself, to be honest, I didn't expect that enthusiastic response.
We want black power. We want black power. We want black power. What do you want? What do you want? Everybody, what do you want? We want black power. We want black power. That's what we gonna get.
Until finally everyone together was thundering, black power, black power. And that was chilling, that was frightening.
It scared people because they did not understand they could not subtract violence from power. They could only see power as a violent instrument accompanying it.
It was empty rhetoric. It was not a message. And the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee had a rich history of being involved in programmatic efforts and not just the use of slogans. It was at that point, during that march, that I made a decision to leave the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee.
The cause of black equality will be decided by black people.
The media saw the call for black power as a major shift in the civil rights movement.
There was a tendency, I thought, to overplay it. There were a lot of new reporters who were new to this beat, who were coming in from a lot of papers around the country as the march began to pick up momentum and as this black power theme began to get some publicity. The second reason was that the theme was never really clearly articulated, or at least what it meant was never clearly defined. And so it was open to very broad interpretations, and there were some whites, for their own reasons, who wanted to take this as a signal of real black hostility and enmity.
Hey, what do you know? How you got to go? Don't worry about it. Hey, what do you know? How you got to go? How you got to go?
And the strategy coming out of black power from SNCC was that blacks should organize with blacks and whites should organize with whites.
SNCC took the position that if there was going to be a march in Mississippi, it should be a march that's indigenous, meaning that Mississippians should be involved, and we should not call out the liberal armies from the north to come in and assist with that march.
So we moved on to work with whites on issues that we felt we should work with. In the next year, that was not civil rights, that was Vietnam.
On the other hand, I want to make it clear that
As the march neared Canton, Mississippi, Reporters played up the differences between Martin Luther King and Stokely Carmichael.
Let me say first that this march is nonviolent. It is a nonviolent expression of our determination to be free. This is the principle of the march, and certainly we intend to keep this march nonviolent.
Mr. Carmichael, are you as committed to the nonviolent approach as Dr. King is?
No, I'm not.
Why aren't you?
Well, I just don't see it as a way of life. I never have. I also realize that no one in this country is asking the white community in the South to be nonviolent. And that, in a sense, is giving them a free license to go ahead and shoot us at will.
The marchers began to set up their tents for the night on the grounds of an all-black school in Canton, Mississippi. Permission to use the school grounds had been granted by the Black School Board, but was later revoked by white city officials.
We don't want anybody to move. The time for running has come to an end. You tell them white folk in Mississippi that all the scared niggas are dead. You tell them they shot all the rabbits, they're gonna deal with the men.
Mississippi state troopers who had once been assigned to protect the marchers now took another stance.
I want to get this over because this is important. We're going to stick together. If necessary, we are willing to fill up all of the jails in the state of Mississippi. And I don't believe they have enough jails to hold the people if they try to arrest us here.
It was like a scene of hell, with the smoke rising and people vomiting and crawling around and choking and crying. And then there was a kind of an eerie silence, and the one thing you could hear over and over again was the thud, thud, thud sound. And what it was the Mississippi troopers kicking people on the ground or hitting them with their rifle butts.
Now, nothing's gonna happen. We going to the church. We gotta worry about the people now. No, let's go. Come on, okay. Move on to the church. Freedom. Come on, come on.
How were you hurt?
They hit me in the chest with a canister.
With a canister.
White power. That's what it was. White power. Goddamn black power.
Despite the tear gas and beatings, the marchers remained nonviolent, but voices in the night told of the rage that many were feeling.
We get him, Whitey! Whitey got to go! Whitey got to go! Whitey got to go! Now if you feel that you can't go on because all of your hope is gone and your life is filled with much confusion until happiness is just an illusion and your world around is...
On June 26, the march entered Jackson, Mississippi. Along the route, 4,000 new voters were added to Mississippi voting rolls since Meredith first began his march against fear 22 days earlier in Memphis.
Then I have watched my dreams turn into a nightmare. I still have a dream. I still have a dream that one day right here in the state of Mississippi, justice will become a reality for all of God's children. I still have a dream.
Go ahead, Doc.
We have to move to a position where we can feel strength and unity amongst each other from Watts to Harlem, where we won't ever be afraid. And the last thing we have to do is to build a power base so strong in this country that will bring them to their knees every time they mess with us.
This was the last great march of the Southern Civil Rights Movement. The call for power would now be raised in communities across the nation, challenging Americans to look at the realities of their democracy.